Hey everybody, it's Scott Bischoff coming to you for Detroit Lions podcast. Today we're going to talk about secondary players, the cornerbacks. We're going to include a safety in this conversation. We're going to break this into two parts right away. So generally what this is a look at some of the corners that I think will be drafted early, and then there's a second group. Some of them I think will be in the second group, but it's just, from this point in time, this is kind of where I am with this group of players. There's 9 of them. Like I said, the first 4 will be in video 1. The next 5 will be in video 2. I don't want to say generalized because it's not like I've watched, 3 plays and kind of, this is what I think based on what I saw a quarter of whatever. This is based on some multiple viewings of games that I've seen on all these guys. I do have better thoughts on some and not as expanded thoughts on others, but again, it's early in the process, so don't hold that against me too much. This is going to be an interesting class of corners specifically, and then there's one safety who I'm going to add to the mix here. So let's talk about the Lions' needs. Before we get into the position specific players. Interestingly, I think the Lions are they're in a unique place on defense. They have a bunch of young players. I'm going to miss a few, but I'm just going to say them. So these are the guys I think are on rookie deals or are young players that I consider, important pieces going forward. So you have Aleem McNeil on a rookie deal. You have Isaiah Buggs. He's a free agent, but he's a younger-ish player. Aiden Hutchinson is going into year 2. James Houston's going into year 2. Josh Pascal's going into year 2. Julian Okwara, I think, is entering year 3. That's just on your defensive line. Malcolm Rodriguez is a second year, is entering his second year. Derek Barnes is going to be entering year 3. He really needs to take a step forward. So then we get into where I think that they'll target, or I know there's a variety of ways to do these kind of things to build and expand your roster, but you have at corner you have Jeff Okudah, who played well at times this year, but the injuries really derailed the back quarter of his season in that range. Jerry Jacobs is a difference-making player. He just is. Those are your outside corners, right? So you have those guys. You have Kirby Joseph, safety, who obviously was incredible in year 1. Going into year 2, you signed Tracy Walker to a long deal. And you paid him, and he tore his Achilles, and it was a brutal injury. But it's one of those injuries where it showed you, that the Lions struggled for a few weeks after that injury to figure it out. And the other player who really made a difference for them was Deshaun Elliott. Deshaun Elliott was missing in the Carolina game. I mean, watch the Carolina game. Look at their run defense. Look at everything that he did, even as an older player, to help pretty much everybody on that defense out. So I feel like I'm missing, a few names, but Ifeatu Melifonwu needs, he's a younger player, but it's questionable as to whether he's going to give you much. But the point being is that you do have room to add one corner or more than one corner because, the nickel cornerback position is seriously important in the NFL these days as teams go, 3 receivers wide. You've seen like Jeff Okudah at his best when he takes Justin Jefferson and just nullifies him, right? So that's a remarkable feat alone. But I guess the point of this is that there's room on this roster for a young, really good player. And at that point in time, you have Okudah, whoever this young player is, and Jerry Jacobs. And I think that you can find a way to put the pieces of that puzzle together to give you the best way of handling a different variety of players, whether they're quick and elusive or fast, or potentially, the AJ Browns, DK Metcalfs on the planet, where they're just huge, fast guys that you have to bracket, right? So, I guess in the end, it's just there's an opportunity on this when you look at this defense and you look at the needs on for the Lions right now. On defense, it's interior defensive line. You need a 3-tech, and then you have needs, in your secondary. You need to continue to add young playmaking talent and difference-making kind of talent into your secondary. There's room there to add a corner and a safety. I would say there's room to add multiple pieces to the back end of that defense, and that's kind of where this video is targeted. So I'm not going to explain that part again in video 2. So I hope that you guys watch part 1 and then go right to part 2, because it's all the same kind of stuff. It's just these first group of players, I think, are more of the elite players in this class. And the second group are players that I'm thinking might be interesting-ish. I mean, it's early, right? So again, we're talking about early February, if that's what day it is, I don't even know. But the Senior Bowl happened yesterday. So this is a very early video to be making concrete, solidified opinions. We're not there yet. We're just not. These are more than generalized, but still, these are not absolutes. We have a lot of room to change our opinion on these things. One of the things that's super important is to be able to evolve your opinion on something. When you get more information or new information, we need to take that information and then be able to either change our opinion, because it happens all the time. You think a player looks like X when you watch, and then he does something and you think, okay, I have to go back and watch because I didn't think he was, let's say he's a player who runs like a mid 4.3s, and you don't see that, and then you have to go back and find it, right? So again, these are better than generalized thoughts, but still, these are not, don't etch this stuff in stone. Okay, so let's just start at the top where we are right now. We're going to talk about Illinois senior cornerback Devon Witherspoon. So I think the thing with Witherspoon that makes it and none of this stuff is easy. So when I say he's a bit of an easier eval, it's simply because the things he does and the way he plays stands out, and it's different than just about everybody else in this class. It's easy to see what he does well, how he does those things well, the swagger and attitude that he plays with. It's just easy. With some of the other players, you really have to dig into what are they doing? What is the defense asking this player to do on this specific situation kind of stuff? With Witherspoon, it's just very easy to see. He is a junkyard dog. He is the physicality pops. I mean, it really does. And so I've made a bunch of notes. So if you feel like I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading. So if the physicality, the way he plays, it just pops. It's super easy to see. And I think that's why he's showing up right now so much so, because he fits where the Lions are. He fits the mentality that work mentality. He's a bully, and I think that it's easy to like that kind of play. There are negatives that come with being that type of player too, but we'll get into that. It's just, again, it's really easy to see how he can fit. There is not a team in the NFL that can't use a player like this in their secondary. Running around, refusing to be blocked, being almost kind of pissed about getting blocked. And, just to put it in like hockey terms, the way I see him, and I giggled a couple of times, is like he's running around, and when somebody touches him or blocks him, it's almost like he's like looking up and taking a number, and he's going to find that guy later. That's what it feels like watching him. So there's some fun stuff with the way with just his demeanor on the field. Obviously, all that stuff fits. Do you worry about penalties? And yeah, but I think you take the good with the bad there, right? So, at Illinois, he can play outside and inside. He can play over the slot. I will tell you, I don't love the way they deploy him. They play him in a lot of off-man coverage, and I don't know. There are times when you can see him get beat with speed when he transitions and when he has to turn and run. I think it would be better. I would like to see him play a little more up close and personal with his hands on. He doesn't, he plays a different kind of coverage than the other guys in this video. But obviously, you can see him play outside. You can see him play inside. I've mentioned this, but he plays like he's pissed off. He really does. There's a lot of man coverage, man-to-man snaps in his film. He is very, very physical. He is always in the mix. He's always around the ball. He's always working to find the ball. He's a smaller guy. I think he's going to be around the 5'11", in that range, and 180, 185 pounds. I always wonder and worry about players who are small, who play the way he does, and just, on that edge, there's potential for there to be, some shoulder stuff, some other injuries that may come up, just play style. That's, you just take it the way it's just going to be kind of how it is with him. Again, he does not like to be blocked at all. He looks like he takes it personal when somebody gets their hands on him. He plays just very much pissed off, which is fun to watch because a lot of corners are passive. A lot of football players play a little bit of a passive game where you want them to be like you want them to play up to the edge. You don't want them to cross the line, but you want them to play right up to that line. And he's not a player that you have to ask to do that. He's a player I think that you're going to have to pull back a little. And I promise you'd rather it be that way than, hey, we need you playing more physical, or we need a little more physicality out of you when you're tackling. That's not with him. So, again, he does play right up to the edge of where he should go, and it's fun to watch. He's very feisty. He is constantly working to the ball, even when it's a run play. You can see him get to the right side of his man, get to the right leverage. Where if let's say a receiver wants him to keep him blocked on the outside, he doesn't allow that to happen. He just doesn't. There's a lot of push-pull type stuff with his game where he'll push a receiver and then pull him and kind of get himself to where he wants to be. It's really, again, he is a fun player to watch. He covers players in a different way. Illinois plays him in a lot more off man. Again, I would want him to be a little more up in your face play style. It's frustrating to watch him, and it's something that concerns me. And I shouldn't say worry because it's the wrong word. I wonder if he has got some agility issues, like some stiffness in his hips, where when he does turn, you can see him. It's not that he's not fast. You can just see him lose a touch of ground. So I wonder with him if we're going to see some 3-cone, like maybe not a bad time, but I think he's going to run in that 4.4 range. And I wonder, looking at him on film, if his agilities are going to be a little lesser than. So then when you look at a player, I know everybody's talking about him at 6 right now, but when you look at a player who is sub 6 foot and right in that 185 pound range, and potentially with some agility stuff, I could be wrong, but with some agility issues, where you can see him, he does get beat down the field when he transitions in his hips, where he's got to turn and run. Is there a chance he's there at 18 because he's a little smaller and he might have some of these issues pop up, and you can see it on film? Yeah, there's a chance. Now, Is there a great chance? No, I don't think so, because I still think he's a really good player, and you can see it with him. So there's your generalized stuff with Witherspoon at this point. We're going to move on to Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. Very different kind of player than Devon Witherspoon. Joey Porter Jr. is going to be around the 6'2" mark. He's going to be sub 200 pounds, right around 200 pounds. He's listed at 6'2" and 194 pounds. He is a redshirt junior. The first thing to know about him is he's got NFL bloodlines, and it matters. It really matters. It's not everything, but it does matter when you look at Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn and some of these other guys who've been drafted the last few years. These guys who come from NFL bloodlines, it matters, right? So we all know that he's got 35-inch arms, which is absolutely bananas to think about. They're like vines. It is crazy looking how long his arms are, and you can see the length. You can see him use those long arms on film. It's not something that he hides. There are other corners in this class who are big, who have long arms. They're not going to have arms as long as his, but there are other corners in this class who don't use their length even though they have it. Porter Jr. does. He has crazy good length, and he uses it. There's a variety of ways he uses his length, and it shows up all over the place. When you just think about him in a little off man where he's in trail coverage, and you consider how long his arms are, and that the window to make some of these down the field throws is so small for a quarterback, and then it's even smaller because of this guy and these crazy go-go gadget kind of arms. I love him there. Like this is how I'd want to play him. Press in your face, turn and run, and make a quarterback make a ridiculous throw to beat you. It's a little bit like the way goalies are playing anymore, where a goalie is fine taking away about 95% of the net, and their perspective is, if you can make a 5% shot, congratulations. I think you can say there's a little bit of that with Porter in that length, where you're going to have to force a quarterback to make an incredibly accurate throw. I know it sounds very like it's a small detail, but these kind of things matter. It's a game of inches, and he's different with these arms. You can see him use the sideline really well. It's one of the things that I wish other corners did better, is to squeeze the receiver into the sideline and give him really very little room to operate. He does a good job of that. So what's interesting with Porter is they've played Ohio State back-to-back years. And so last year you get to see him lined up with Garrett Wilson and what he looks like running with Garrett Wilson. And this year you get to see him with Marvin Harrison Jr., who, by the way, is going to be, I think, in that top 5-10 range next year as wide receiver 1 in a pretty good class, but he is a rare dude. He is a dude. And so it's good to watch Porter against Ohio State for 2 years. He's very twitched up. He moves incredibly smooth. There's a lot of fluidity to the way he moves. Again, he covers a lot of ground. He has a long stride. So I wonder what he's gonna. I don't know. I don't have a great feeling for what he's gonna run. My guess is it's going to be around 4.5. Because sometimes these guys with these long strides, it's hard to get a great feel for what their 40 time is. But he doesn't. He ran with Garrett Wilson fine. He runs with Marvin Harrison. So I think he can run. There are no issues with his movement ability. So even when it's interesting because even when he's up in press coverage and he misses and he doesn't do a great job of landing his punch, he recovers pretty quick. He recovers really well. So looking at that and the arm length and all those things, I think it's one of those things where with him, you may not have to give him so much safety help, where some guys, if they miss, they're folding over at their waist, and it's going to take them a long time to recover. But with Porter, he does recover pretty impressively, pretty quick. He's got long limbs and arms. Obviously, we've talked about that. You can see him. I would tell you to watch the Ohio State game both years. If we think Garrett Wilson is a pretty elite mover, Porter runs with him and he's fine. There's no issues there. I love the watching him get his hands on Marvin Harrison Jr. Harrison Jr. is an alpha, and Porter's got his hands on him, is trying to push him, trying to move him. To me, that's a guy who's playing with a lot of confidence. He's a very interesting player. He stayed. One of the most impressive things he did, in the multiple viewings I have of him, is he stays in his back pedal for what seems like forever a few times. And I'm talking about 7, 8 strides back in his back pedal, and he's fast. So it's like this guy's comfortable moving like that, staying in his pedal, and he's able to watch the quarterback, watch routes develop in front of him, and react to the stuff that's happening in front of him in man coverage. It's very impressive. And the last thing I have on him at this point is, and we've talked a little bit about this, is just how difficult he makes throws. Whether we're talking about a short slant where he's in coverage and he can stick his hand, he can push his hand through to push the ball out, and he's there because he does have that length and he uses it. In trail coverage, again, he's kind of like blanketed receivers, and he just makes these throws very, very tough. Joey Porter Jr. is a very impressive player. I know Witherspoon is being talked about as cornerback 1 in this class, and I get it, but I think Joey Porter Jr. is in the conversation too. He should be. Really good player. Very impressive on film. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Oregon's Christian Gonzalez. And I find him a touch on the frustrating side to watch physically. So when I see him move, he's outrageously smooth and athletic and fluid and all these things for a guy he's a junior, 6'2", 201 pounds. Similar size to Joey Porter Jr., but I don't think he's going to have the arm length. But he does have really good length, right? So, but when you watch him move, you think there are no limitations with this guy, the way he moves in coverage, the way he stays in coverage and in phase and all these things. His ability to pattern match and to mirror the receiver's movements is ridiculous. It just is. It's amazing to watch how smooth and fluid and just all around the way this guy moves for a guy who's got long limbs. I think he's got versatility to play all over the place in a variety of systems, whether that's in a generalized man system. You can see him he's got a bunch of man snaps where he's turning his back to the quarterback and running with receivers. I think that I would be very comfortable with him in zone concepts just because of his ability to move. There are moments where he will drift. So if you see him like against Georgia, there's a couple times where he's running, he's playing in press, and he runs with the receiver, and the receiver will run like a stop or a comeback route, and you can see Gonzalez drift, 3 to 4 yards before he stops and can get turned and starts to come back. So there's a little bit of that where that feels to me like there's some inconsistency with his confidence about his speed, right? And I don't think he's slow by any stretch. I think that when he's running, he's going. And maybe that speaks to a little bit about how hard it is for a guy who's tall to drop his hips and stop and turn, right? But I don't think it's anything that where you would say it's a red flag type of thing. It's something I noticed, so that he drifts a little bit vertically when he needs to stop. Oregon plays him in a way where they have no issues with him on an island at all. None. I don't see any bad movements at all. I think he understands what defenses or what an offense is trying to do. I think there's a strong understanding of what routes look like and what receivers are giving away because of the way he sometimes runs routes for them. The fluidity in his hips, turning either way, it's beautiful to watch. So there's all that beautiful stuff in the way he moves, but then we get into this, and this is the frustrating part. I think he would be an incredible flag football player. And I realize that sounds dismissive. And but that's what I see with him is there's very little physicality to the way he plays. To the point where there are moments on his film where he gives up, like he gives up a touchdown pass, and he's in great position to make a play. So the fact that he's in position there, and he's done such a good job in coverage that he's right there to make a play, he just doesn't. He doesn't use his hands well at the catch point. He doesn't stand his ground well in those kind of situations. He looks at times passive in those situations where you need to be aggressive in those situations where, you're 15, 20 yards down the field and I've blanketed you, but I'm just going to allow you to catch the ball because I'm not physical enough with my hands. And sometimes so looking at that, I wonder how competitive is he? And, I'm not saying anything, super negative about, I'm not calling names or any of that stuff. I just want him to be more physical and more aggressive in certain ways. He doesn't punch like in press. He's in tight man coverage, but he turns and he runs, and it's impressive. It's impressive to watch. It's just, he's lacking some of the physicality that you would really want that would take him from being a guy who I think will go in the middle of round one to being like the number one corner if he played physically, because his movement abilities are rare. So again, it's a little bit frustrating to watch how passive he is at times with the ball in the air where you really need to make plays. That's kind of where I am on Gonzalez. Gonzalez is a great athlete. I think he's going to test great. I think he's going to run the agilities. He's going to put up crazy good numbers. It's just on the football field, there are times when you just want him to be more physical. Please be more physical. That's where it is with him. So those are the three elite corners in this class. And then I'm going to bring in safety, cornerback, linebacker, edge player, whatever you want to call him. Brian Branch, the junior from Alabama, 6 foot, 193 pounds. So the first thing I'll tell you is I don't think this is a crazy fast guy. So I don't expect him to run the 40 really, really super fast. I think to me he looks like more of a short area, quick athlete who's much more comfortable closer to the line of scrimmage than farther away from the ball. But when I think about how a player who comes in and with the ability to impact a defense, Brian Branch is up there in this class with just about any of them, just with his ability to be, this is a silly saying, but that Swiss Army knife type player who you can utilize, all over the place, whether it's over the slot, or as a deeper safety, on the end of the line of scrimmage, kind of setting an edge. He can play at the linebacker level. He plays single high. He can play outside. He plays all over the place. And, he's a great tackler. Super functionally sound as a tackler. So if he gets near you, you're getting tackled. He is one of those guys where the Lions wanted to run the split zone system earlier in the season, and you're losing Tracy Walker and then not having really anybody super reliable forces them to kind of go away from a lot of those looks. But Branch is a guy who gives you all of those looks just because he can do everything. And he did for Alabama this year. He made a huge jump in his game from 2021 to 2022. Clearly the leader of that defense. And those kind of things, man, just watching him play and the impact he had all over the place. I don't think he's super fast or speedy. I don't think he's going to be one of these rare testers, but he's not a false stepper either. And I'll tell you that, when we're talking about short areas, consider, maybe over a 10 to 15 yard distance, I will take the guy who runs 4.5, but has instincts to know exactly where he's going over a guy who runs 4.3. And that guy who runs 4.3 may take either a false step or just hesitate a touch. The guy who runs 4.5 will get there quicker, and that's Branch. So, again, I don't think he looks really fast and all that stuff, but he has instincts to find the ball. He knows exactly where to go. Super, super sound when he gets there. You can see him. We can see what I'm talking about with some of the speed stuff. There's a play against Texas where he gets beat in off-man coverage deep, and it doesn't look like it's tough to do it, right? So it's not anywhere where I'd want to utilize him as a deep safety and way off man and, trying to transition and all that stuff. I just wouldn't play him that way, but you can see, he does get beat like that where you can see, I just don't think he's going to recover and run crazy fast. You can see him sift through route combinations, to pick up the right receiver. He does it all the time. Some of that stuff is complicated where, did you pick up the right guy or the wrong guy and now somebody's open? He always seems to be in the right spot in that regard. You can see him get involved at the edge level where he sets the edge. He's physical. He'll take on pullers. He'll take on big guards. He does all these things. Now, is that a perfect way to use him? No, but he can do those things. So you're looking at a guy who I think gives you blitz looks, gives you, it's like he's 4 or 5 different positions on the field at one time. So the versatility he gives you is just crazy. You can see him, again, I think he's more a short area quickness athlete who looks a lot more comfortable near the ball than further away from the ball. Get him close to the line of scrimmage where he can be your Swiss Army knife. He can do a variety of things. Think Jalen Petrie from Baylor, who ended up in Houston, and how good he looked at times this year. Branch is like an upgraded version of what Petrie was at Baylor. You can see him, where he closes on stuff that's happening in front of him, where he gets out of his pedal super quick. So you've got some of that stuff where you can see, if he can see things developing in front of him, it looks really good. He's always around the ball. To me, he is a super interesting player. Very valuable to the Alabama defense. There's not a lot being discussed about him right now, but I don't think he would be there when it comes to like the pick 18 range. But boy, if he is, super intriguing player. Really like him a lot. So that's the first 4. Those are the elite ones. As this process plays out, there's a lot of players I haven't seen yet. So, but those are the 4 that I would say, we all should be talking about at this point. Stay tuned for number 2 coming up shortly. And we're going to talk about 5 more. I'll try to make it a little shorter for number 2. But Stay tuned. Coming at you for number 2.